What's up friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing the anti-TBR tag, which I was tagged in so long ago that I don't even remember who tagged me in it, so sorry to whoever that was. I will, however, have the original creators video in the description, so make sure to check them out. Before we get into the questions, I do want to preface that the purpose of this tag is to kind of be controversial and give unpopular opinions most of the times. But I'm not a very controversial person. I'm more likely to have lukewarm feelings about an author or a book series or whatever than have, die-hard unpopular opinions. So it's hard for me to pinpoint authors or books that's a straight no for me. Hopefully this is still entertaining for y'all, but let's just get into the questions. So question number 1 is a popular book everyone loves that you have no interest in reading. And for me, that is anything by Sarah J. Maas. I have never understood the hype of her books. I did read Throne of Glass and I was thoroughly disappointed. My biggest gripe being that we were told over and over again that our main character was this badass assassin, more than we ever were shown that she was a badass assassin. So I never got past Throne of Glass. It was so annoying to me. I didn't want to deal with it. And I'm not interested in reading any of her other series either. Court of Thorns and Roses, I think, is her most popular one. No. This is where I do have a steadfast feeling. It's a no. The impression that I've gotten of Court of Thorns and Roses is like unnecessarily long porn that's toxic and not in a fun way either. Question number 2 is a classic book or author you don't have an interest in reading. Well, definitely no more J.D. Salinger. I still haven't forgiven them for Catcher in the Rye. I'm actually rereading Catcher in the Rye from one of my purging videos, so if I somehow change my mind about that book and I decide that I like it, this is going to be embarrassing. But as of right now, Catcher in the Rye is my most hated book. And even if somehow my mind has changed about that, I don't think I'm ever gonna read another Salinger. Stephen King is another author that's like on thin ice, although I am interested in some of his premises. And as you can maybe see in here, I have read some of his books, but there are just some uncomfy things in his books that I'm just not about. I don't think I'm ever gonna read It, for example, even if I read other Stephen King books, because of that one scene that I've heard about involving children doing decidedly not childlike activities. If you know, you know. Question number 3 is an author whose books I have no interest in reading. Talia Hibbert, maybe? Becky Albertelli? This is where I get boring, because to be honest, in general, I'm not gonna say no to an author without at least reading one of their books. So I'm not gonna say no to Talia Hibbert or Becky Albertelli, but I will say that I'm the most meh about these authors, at least the ones that come to mind. Becky Albertelli, I feel like I'm too old for the books that she writes. They're too young and immature just from the synopsis I have read of her books. I'm more open to Talia Hibbert because her Brown Sister series is so hyped, but honestly, if the series wasn't hyped, I don't think I would seek it out or anything. There are other romance books that interest me way more than that. I don't know, I'm just not intrigued. And question number 3 actually has a second part to it, which is a problematic author whose books you have no interest in reading. And for me, that's Kristoff. That man just gives me gross vibes. I don't know how to describe it. Full disclosure, I did read the Illuminae series, which I adored. I still love it. But he co-wrote that with Amy Kaufman, and I don't know anything about Amy Kaufman. Maybe she's a better person, maybe she's not. Maybe she's the reason Illuminae was good, for all we know. I don't know. But I haven't considered reading any of his individual books. The premises they're not very interesting to me, and that's even before I realized how problematic he is, so I wouldn't have picked them up either way. But then you realize he's extremely disrespectful of other cultures, gross about the way he writes young women, and from what I've seen on social media, a whiny man-child. So I don't want any of that energy. And if all that wasn't enough, Lowe's video on his recent book, what was it, Empire the Vampire, would have done it. If you haven't seen Lowe's video, she uploaded it months ago at this point, but it's still so very entertaining and you should check that one out. You should especially check it out if you're at all intrigued by Empire of the Vampires, because I really think Lowe's video gives you an idea of what you're getting yourself into, and I don't think you want to get yourself into whatever that is. Little baby. You're my little baby. Question number 4 is an author that you've read a couple books from and have decided that they're not for you. John Green, maybe? I don't know. I was a fan of The Fault in Our Stars when it came out, but any other books that I have read by John Green were lackluster. I read a few back then when I was about the target age range for his books, and they were okay, but they weren't anything special. And I haven't read any of his books for years up until last year when I read Turtles All the Way Down, which I thought would be better. I thought it would be more mature, not necessarily in the characters because they're still the same age range, they're still teenagers, but I thought his writing style would have matured and be more entertaining for adults. And I know that's not his target audience. I know his target audience are teenagers, but there are plenty of YA stories that the writing style is good enough to entertain people of a wider age range. I just don't think that's the case with John Green. What I can say about Turtles All the Way Down is that, as far as I'm aware, it was an accurate depiction of OCD. I think John Green himself has OCD, so obviously it would be accurate to his experience. And I think the book would be helpful to teenagers who are dealing with OCD or anxiety. So there's value to it, of course, but the story and the writing beyond that representation just felt very average to me. Kendar Blake and Riley Sager are two other authors that I'm pretty meh about, but the thing about this question is that I don't typically read a couple books of an author before deciding that they're a no for me. I read one, and if that one doesn't vibe with me, I'm so not likely to pick up anything after that. Question number 5 is a genre you have no interest in or a genre you tried to get into but couldn't. This is another question that I'm meh about. I have genres that I love, but I don't have genres that I hate. I'm not gonna rule out any genre because there are good books in every single one. If I had to choose, and I do have to choose because I've put myself in the situation where this is a question I have to answer, I would say YA contemporary or romance. I get drawn in by the hype when people talk about books in either genre online, but if people weren't hyping up those books, I wouldn't seek it out myself for the most part. That's not to say that there aren't books in both of those genres that I love, but they generally have to work harder for me to love them than, say, I don't know, a fantasy book. And if they cross over with another genre, then they work even better. This Is How You Lose the Time More is definitely a romance book to me, but it has heavy sci-fi in it, obviously. So it made it stand out more, and it's one of my favorite romance books. Question number 6 is a book that you have bought but will never read. I was gonna show you the book that I bought that I will never read, but I don't know if you can see, there's a cat on my lap now, so I really can't move him. I'm gonna have to pop in a picture or something like that. The first book that comes to mind is this H.P. Lovecraft collection that I have. I read most books that I've bought, even if I hate them, because I don't know, I'm a completionist. I don't want to feel like I wasted my money, whatever, what have you. But I have unhauled this H.P. Lovecraft book. I know it's technically still in my possession, but it's in the unhaul pile, so it doesn't count to me. I just haven't gone around to getting rid of it. I've tried reading it a couple times, but each time I get maybe 20 pages in and then I can't keep doing it. I get bored. I'd love to know about his stories just to see how he's influenced modern horror, but it's not worth the pain to me. And also the man's super racist, so how good are his stories really? I can just Google Lovecraftian references if they ever come up and I want to know what's going on. Question number 7 is a series you have no interest in reading or a series that you started and you ended up DNFing. I DNF'd The Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice midway through book 3, which was The Queen of the Damned. This is the only book in the series that I physically owned, so I was determined to get through book 1 and book 2 in order to read book 3. Again, if I buy a book, I want to read it even if I hate it because I don't want to waste my money. That's not a good reason, but that's my reason. But let me tell you, that task was so painful. Interview with a Vampire wasn't so bad. You know, it was just bogged down with details that slowed the reading more than it added to it, but it was okay. It was a very classic vampire story. The Vampire Lestat had like one good portion towards the end of it where you're getting the backstory of how vampires originated, and the chapters involving that story are really good. If you want to read just that portion, comment below, DM me or something, and I'll figure out what chapters it was so that you can just read that and skip the rest, because the rest of it, it felt ridiculous. Literally, just get a sample of the book and read the first few pages. Try to tell me that that does not read like My Immortal, the fan fiction. Anyway, by the time I got to The Queen of the Damned, I was near tears. I think I made it 100 pages in before I decided that I deserved better than this experience. All right, and the final question, question number 8, is a new release you have no interest in reading. So I'm not super on top of 2022 releases, so there might be a better answer out there, but the first one that comes to mind is Reclaim the Stars. Reclaim the Stars is an anthology of, I think, sci-fi and fantasy stories, all with a common theme of being of the perspective of the Latin American diaspora. I'm never inclined to pick up anthologies anyway, they're just not my cup of tea, but even if they were, this is one that I don't want to support. Several Latin American creators that I respect and I consider friends have spoken out about this anthology and about how hurtful it is that barely any of the authors are Latin American. They're certainly Latinx, but that's a completely different perspective. And I'm not here to debate whether or not it's different, because it is. It's entirely different. Don't come into the comments if you're intending to fight me on that, because I don't care what you have to say about it. The point is, there is a definite worry that these people are trying to tell stories and reclaim experiences that aren't theirs to reclaim. Whoever put together this anthology could have found more Latin American voices, and they absolutely could have found voices that aren't anti-Indigenous. I think, what is it, like 3 of the authors on this book are anti-Indigenous? Why? Who thought that was a good idea? I don't know. The only goodish thing I can think to say is that there are a couple debut authors on the anthology that I don't have a problem with. I don't think they've done anything particularly bad besides choosing to do this anthology. And I'd like to believe that it's just a poor decision on their part. And I'm hoping that those couple debut authors will put out their own individual books so that we can get a taste of their work and be able to judge them on their own merit instead of judging them by association of these people that they're working with right now. And that is it for this tag. Again, not very controversial. I don't have many unpopular opinions. If you agree with any of the things that I said, if you disagree with any of the things that I said, even better, start up a debate in the comments. But if you have your own unpopular opinions, die-hard hatred of any authors or books, please let me know, because I thrive off of that. And if you're interested in getting more content from me, please remember to subscribe. I will see you in the next one.